So for this video, I'm going to start with this 1968 Ford tractor. We're going to talk about belts, hoses, and air cleaners. On this style engine, where you've got the radiator up here in the front, and you've got the engine right behind it, and it drives the rear wheels, it's very easy to get to a lot of these components. Your upper radiator hose is here. Your belts run right down here on this pulley system. And here's your lower radiator hose. Basically with belts, what you want to check is you want to make sure that they're in good condition in terms of being tight. You want to make sure you're not seeing any frays, and we'll look a little closely at a used belt in a little bit. This one's pretty new. For radiator hoses, you want to give them a squeeze along their length, make sure there's no weak spots. You'll feel, it's soft, but it's not super soft. You also want to look here at the ends and make sure there's no fraying, there's no splits that are forming. There's a little bit of tension right here at the very end of the hose where it fits over the metal part of the radiator and the metal part of the engine on the other side. That's where you're going to start seeing splitting if the hoses are starting to dry. The other place you have to watch out for are places like this here, where you've got a piece of metal that's jammed up against the hose. This one here I had to replace not long ago because that bolt was starting to wear into the hose. Okay, for the air cleaner on this tractor, it's located behind the grill. And in this case, the way it works is air comes in here and there's a tub of oil down in this area, and it bubbles the oil, the air through the oil, and that's what cleans it. All the sediment ends up down the bottom here. You pull this bottom piece off, change the oil, and then you can fix it that way. I'm not going to pull that off because it's rather messy, but this is the old way that they used to do air cleaners. Okay, as we walk over here, I want to show you the difference between an old belt and a new belt. This here's the old belt, and if you look carefully, you'll see that there's frayed pieces, there's splits, and basically the bottom of the belt is looking really rough. Those kind of things are the beginnings of the belt starting to separate. When you start to see this on a V-belt, this is the time to change it. And it doesn't matter if it's a car or a tractor or any other type of engine. If it has this style belt, that's what you'll start to see. Modern engines have what's called a serpentine belt, which is a much wider belt, but it's very, very thin. And what you want to look for in those are small strands starting to separate. And you'll be able to tell those just by looking at it. And you will see how the serpentine belt looks in a minute. This is a new belt. You can see the plies very clearly the way it was cut. Those plies pretty much vanish once they're in use. The rubbers get smeared across all the plies and they disappear. So it's usually pretty easy to tell if something has new belts. The other way, of course, is to look at the outside and look for the writing on the belt itself. That also disappears fairly quickly. So in a modern vehicle, we've got two problems. First, on a lot of your front-wheel drive and all-wheel drive, instead of having the engine go front to back, it goes side to side. So what ends up happening is you get all of your belts over on the side, and they're jammed in between the engine and the fender. But by shining a light down in and looking carefully, you can tell whether or not the belts look to be in good shape. These were just changed because last year I saw that small pieces of material were starting to fray off the belts. What you want to look for in those serpentine style belts is small pieces. They look like hairs that are starting to form on the edges or in the middle of the belt if you can see the backside. Radiator hoses on this style are also difficult. About the only one you can see here is this one way down here, and again you can just grab a hold of that, squeeze it, make sure it's okay. But also on a car, there is another set of hoses that you need to check. These are the heater hoses. These will always be somewhere on the firewall going to someplace on the back of the engine. And again, you want to look at the overall condition of these hoses, give them a little bit of a squeeze, make sure that they're they're in a good pliable but not too soft condition. And you want to try to see the ends. The ends of those hoses are important to tell you the condition. And these here look pretty darn good down in there. So the heater hoses, generally speaking, are where you're going to have a first burst if something's going to let go. And the reason being is there's a lot more heat back there to dry out the rubbers. One of the nice things about modern vehicles, though, is that the air cleaner is much, much easier to get to usually. In this case here, I've removed 2 screws and it pulls right out. The one thing you want to do here is you want to check the back side of the material. Okay. And usually you can tell between what's used to be clean and what's dirty. This one here is pretty dirty, but if I look behind it, not a lot of that dirt's getting into the pleats. This one has what's called a pre-cleaner and then the actual air cleaner. So this is actually in good shape, even though it looks really dirty. The other thing you want to do is you want to take a vacuum or something and you want to clean out any of this debris that starts to build up inside your air box, because this stuff here just degrades and starts getting into your filter. So once a year or so, you want to open this up and clean it out. I did it not too long ago, so there really isn't too much in there. It's looking pretty good. Anyway, that's how you check your belts, your hoses, and your air cleaner on a couple of different vehicles. The older the vehicle, the easier it typically is. The more modern a vehicle, the harder some of the pieces can be. I had a Jeep for a while, and it was very easy to change these parts. On this car, you actually have to remove the whole fender to get at the belts. It's a royal pain in the butt. So when you go over your car, make sure that what you're looking at is the right piece. For example, this big hose up here is for air. It's not for fluids. Okay? And if you're unsure, take a picture of what you're looking at and send it to me, and I'll help you try to figure out what you're looking at, okay? All right, guys. What I want you to do for this assignment is to find these parts in your vehicle and either make a short video to tell me how you checked it or write me up a short paragraph explaining how you checked it. All right? Good luck.